Welcome back to another episode of Surprise Mama,
where we talk about the shit they don't tell you.
Welcome to the Surprise Mama podcast,
where we like to talk about the shit they don't tell you, or just, I don't know, the shit we didn't know.
Yeah, or just our experiences with being first-time moms.
Yeah, totally.
I'm Ashley.
I'm Molly.
And tonight we're talking about...
we're going to talk about postpartum sundown scaries.
Or nighttime scaries.
Yeah, nighttime scaries. I was calling it that when we originally talked about this topic.
Yeah.
But then I just started researching a little bit, and I realized there's kind of this movement happening, this viral movement happening where they're calling it sundown scaries, which sounds better a little bit, I guess.
I think it does sound
because nighttime scaries, it's like, oh, so it's dark out, but no, sundown scaries is like, it's very specific, and it's more in line with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to chat about this because it's something that I've experienced a lot. And honestly, it's something I'm still kind of experiencing.
So you're kind of like in the midst of it.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of like newborn, definitely it's there, but I think kind of further along is kind of when you experience a lot more, especially when you're trying to like maybe get your child to sleep through the night or just I don't know. It's such a hard...
I feel like, honestly, I've experienced it at every stage of my daughter's life. She's now just about to be 7 months old. So, like, I feel like the scary has kind of just changed a little bit, but I don't know. So, like, what are the sundown scaries or the nighttime scaries? Essentially, what they are is that, like, sudden feeling of dread or anxiety when the sun starts to go down. So, like, the light starts changing, and all of a sudden your body just starts going like, ooh, I don't like this. I'm getting chills just talking about it because I still, like, viscerally feel it, like, almost every day.
And it's what's so crazy is that the time change.
Yeah.
So we just recently, like a few weeks ago, had a time change where the sun goes down earlier. So
It's gross.
Yeah, it just is like exasperates this, where you're just like, okay, before at least I had a little bit more sun during the day, but now that sundown scaries just creep in earlier.
Oh, like at like 4:30, 5 o'clock, and you're like, my kid isn't even in bed for another 2 hours, and you're like, oh my gosh.
But you're just thinking ahead. You're like, oh my God, I just know. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that the sundown scaries can be defined of like just that creeping feeling when the sun starts to set and the light changes, and like this feeling of anxiety, not knowing what the night's gonna hold. Like, is my kid gonna be up a lot? Am I gonna be able to sleep? Like, if they're sick, is everything gonna be okay? Or I know early on, like, well, I'll get to that in a minute, but like, it can also be, I think, this feeling of loneliness and dread, because if you are breastfeeding or bottle feeding, whatever it is, it's like you might be up alone with your baby, like in the dark multiple times a night. And that can be like either a very intimate, sweet thing. At this point in time, it's very tender, and I like actually love that time that I get with my daughter. But I think it can also just be like, you can dread it because you're already so tired. And I also think like it's this feeling of, oh my God, the day's already done. How is it already over? Like, what have we even gotten finished? So
now, okay, my like question, or I guess like clarifying sort of thing, is, would this be considered postpartum depression and or postpartum anxiety? Or is it like a separate thing from those two?
I think it toes the line on both of those.
Okay.
And those are like, I remember like when we chatted about this, I was like, it's gonna be tricky to not just like talk about that topic, because I just think that is its own topic. But I do think that this is symptomatic of perhaps, like, maybe you have postpartum anxiety or maybe you have postpartum depression, PPD, PPA, but, like, this is symptomatic of that perhaps. But I also think that this is its own separate thing because it's almost this phenomenon that, like, every parent, even dads, like, even my husband Ryan can describe this feeling where he was like, I was so worried about her, like, I was scared that, like, she wasn't gonna be safe, and it's just
Oh.
like, everybody has some kind of experience of the Sundown Scaries, and yeah, but I do think that, yes, it can be related to postpartum depression or anxiety,
Interesting. Because, yeah, like,
but I'm not a doctor, so
well, I mean,
but yes, to answer I think that answers the
well,
question.
because I was talking about, like, my experience with this in a little
Yeah.
bit, but it is one of those things where when you even think about anxiety or depression, a lot of times those are worse at night.
100%.
So, I mean, I agree with you. I do think this
Yeah.
is, like, a separate, um, thing than those 2, but it is one of those things where it just does get worse at night.
It's so
But it is
interrelated.
kind of a very specific at night sort of thing.
It is. But it's interesting, like, I guess I'll just start going into, like, my
Yeah, yeah,
experience if
yeah,
that's
yeah.
okay. Like, so I've been thinking about this a lot the last few days because I've just been experiencing it more recently, which is why I was like, Ashley, can we talk about this? Um, because like ever since I was a little kid, I can remember sort of this creeping dread of, like, the night. Like, even like, I remember it as far back as when I was, like, 6 or 7, and I would just be like, "Ugh," like, "Oh god, I don't wanna go to bed." Like, "Oh, no." Like, it's nighttime. And there were, like, other things related to that
Mhm.
and, like, going on with me, but, like, I've always had this, and it's been amplified
Yeah.
as a new mom. Yeah. So
I was gonna say, like, as a kid, was it because you, like, just didn't wanna go to sleep?
no, I had, like, recurring nightmares.
Okay.
But I didn't tell anybody. So I was just, like, having these recurring nightmares, and I just was so scared of the night. And it was like it's very similar feeling where you just don't know what's going to happen. It literally, like, it's almost like I'm re-experiencing it, like, as, like, a child. But, like, I I just wanna talk about the different, like, I guess, seasons of how
Mhm.
I've experienced this with my daughter.
Okay.
So, when she was first born, I mean, fresh baby, fresh out of the womb. Oh my god, babies make so many noises. And when you're, like, a new parent, you come home from the hospital, and it's terrifying.
Mhm.
Like, you don't have any understanding of what should be normal. There's no familiarity, and, like, every move they make, if they're, like, in a bassinet or, like, in your room, you're just like, "Oh my god, what was that? Like, are they
Mhm.
choking? Are they okay? Are they breathing?" And so, like, that is just, like, a normal experience, and then you include, like, the Sundown Scaries, where you're, like, sleep deprived, you're, like, emotionally
Mhm.
exhausted, and so I think yeah,
And 2, it's like, you know you're about to get up to feed.
like,
Like,
multiple times a night.
you know you're not going to be getting a lot of sleep. So not only are you sleep deprived, you're like, "I'm gonna fall asleep for max 2 hours right now,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna have to get up." And then, it's just like, you just
Yeah.
know it's going to happen.
And I had a lot of fear because my daughter was small and I had to feed her every 2 hours. So essentially I had to feed her like every hour and a half. So I was awake like every hour and a half for like the first like month and a half, basically, until she got like enough weight on her to sleep longer stretches. And like she was rooming in with us, I think Ryan and I were trying to remember the other day, like, when did we move her to her crib in her, nursery? We can't remember, but it was, like, she was in our room for probably, like, 6 weeks at least, right? So, like, a month and a half,
Okay.
and I would just nurse her in bed. Like, I would sit up, and I would, like, have all these pillows around me so that, like, nothing could happen because I was so paranoid. I was like, "I'm so tired," like, but I also, like, I had more protection doing that than I did if I was, like, in a chair that didn't have as much, like, cushion around it. But, like, I was like, "Oh my god, I'm on the verge of falling asleep." The entire time, like, I would literally put, like, a movie on and just, like, stare at it with my eyes, like, wide open trying to stay awake, and, like, it's so ridiculous. But it got worse because my husband had to go back to work after, like, 2 weeks.
Mm.
So, he was home and we're, like, in this, like, fresh haven, just, like, taking care of our kids, surviving together.
I will say the first few weeks, you're like, "Oh, yeah." It's like the honeymoon ph to a certain extent for, like, the first week. It's like the honeymoon phase of having a newborn. You're like, "Oh, we're figuring it out, and it's hard, but, like, we're doing." And then after that, you're like, "This is so difficult."
So hard because
Especially
then
for
we're
yourself
witching out
first start to work.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just remember, like, I was telling Ryan, I was like, "Yeah, Ashley and I are gonna talk about this week, like, the Sundown Scaries," and he went, "Oh, I remember that too, because he experienced it
Mm.
too." And I think, like, we're always like, "Oh, it's just the moms," but I'm like, "No, like, it's the dads, like, the dads experience this too." And for him, he was like, "I was so worried because like, during the day, we're alert, and we can watch her and monitor her when she's sleeping, but at night, it's like we're not totally checked in, we're trying to get rest." And he was like, "I had so much anxiety about that because she was small." And, like, I was like, "Do you remember, Ryan, how we would be eating dinner, and I would lose my entire appetite, I could not eat, and I would just start sobbing." And I was, like, just so overwhelmed by, like, the fear of the night, and it was especially worse right before he went back because I was like, "How am I gonna, like, be home the next day?" So, not only was it like, "Oh my god, this whole day is over, and now the night is coming, and the winter's coming." Like, I feel like it's like
It sounds
like
so ominous, like,
but,
the
like, it
but
kinda
it
is.
feels that way.
It feels that way when you're in it, and, like, I I felt that, and then I'd be like, "But how's tomorrow gonna go?" And so that was, like, a phase of it, okay, and then we got through that, and it got better, but then it just, like it just
Mhm.
changes, and I just remember, like, feeling really overwhelmed, like, even after she moved to her nursery, which was great because it was better for her, she was sleeping better, we were too, but then I'd be, like, in the nursery alone, the only person that's awake. Like, Ryan would come help, like, change her diaper, like, we have a great routine, we had it, and, like but I would just be sitting there like, "Oh my god, it's so quiet," and, like, hearing all these sounds of, like, the house, and you feel like you're the only one in the universe that's up. But, like, the reality is there's a bunch of other moms that are also up feeding their kid or, like, dads that are tapping in, like, to
Mhm.
help, and so I don't know, like, I still am really, like, overwhelmed by this topic at times
Mhm.
because, like, I just remember how paralyzing it was. Like, I couldn't even eat sometimes because I was, like, so freaking terrified of just, like, the sun going down, and I just felt, like, sad.
Yeah,
And, like, sometimes still
and
happens.
it's hard because I remember the same thing that happened, like, we put my daughter down, and then I would just sit in the back room and just sit there,
Yeah.
and Dad would be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No."
Mm-mm.
Like, I'm actually, like, pretty sad right now
Yeah.
because I'm gonna be up for another 2 hours maybe, and then I'm gonna go to sleep for an hour, maybe 2, and then I'm gonna have to get up, and I'm gonna have to feed and pump, and it's just like, the nighttime it never made it feel better,
No. No.
and it was hard to explain.
It was, like, I found it hard to explain why all of a sudden emotionally, mentally, physically, like, I shut down.
Mhm.
And it's like it's almost like this out of body experience because you're also, like, in this hormone bath, which we've talked about before. So, like, that is a huge other factor that I think impacts this
Mhm.
or in the early stages. So you're, like, coming down from all these hormones, and you're, like, sleep deprived, and you're trying to explain to another person that you're literally having this, like, fearful out-of-body experience, but you can't. Like, I can explain it now, but in the moment, I would just sit there and I would, like, tremble. Like, I don't know what's wrong with me, Ryan. I don't know. I'm just really sad. I have no appetite. I can't eat. Like, I'm too anxious. And I would just sob. And it was, like, for a while. Like, it was happening for a while.
Now, do you think it would be different, like, with the second child? Because I think maybe a part
Probably not.
well, because I feel like this, you mentioned before, it's like, and bringing a newborn home, they do make a lot of noises. You don't really expect that. It's just kind of surprising. They
Dude,
make a lot of noises.
like,
So I feel like
yeah.
some of the stuff you would kind of already know a little bit more.
Yeah.
No, I do agree though. I don't think it would be completely different because you still
Yeah.
have to like feed your child and you still have to like, you're still sleep deprived. Like,
But
but
then you
it
have
is,
2 kids that you're taking
that
care
is
of
true.
too. So you're, like, you're on duty, like,
Yeah.
all day,
Yeah.
you know?
That is true.
Like, yeah. But it's kinda like, you know how people say, like, they have, like, the Sunday scaries where you're,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
dreading going back to work the next day?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I have those too, but I feel like I'm starting to have them again, like the sundown scaries, but, like, because we're in this new phase where I'm, like, trying to figure out different elements of sleep training, or, like, we did a roundup, like, early on, and it's like, with solids and anything that you change in their diet or anything, it just upsets sleep, and so you just never know, like, what's gonna happen, and I think the factor of, like, unknown
Yeah.
is what kinda makes it
Yeah.
so dreadful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember with my daughter, I definitely experienced this, and I like you said, I didn't know how to name it,
Yeah. I
and
language for it.
I remember very specifically telling a ton of my friends. I'd be like, "How are you doing? How are you feeling?" And I'm like during the day, I'm actually fine. Like I never felt like I had depression or anxiety or any of that. I remember telling them though that I hated the night.
Mhm.
I was like, I don't know how to describe it, but I hate night so much. When I put my daughter down, I get so sad. And I just like didn't know how to really, and I felt weird telling people that because it was like, this seems weird because it's like,
It's not weird though.
it's
It's,
not.
like, such a
Yes.
normal
Yes.
experience.
Yes. But I will say, especially to you, it gets so much better.
It does get better. I think that, like, my experience might be a little more unique with, like, the prolonged
Right.
nature of it, but, like, I think there's things that we've done that have helped,
Yeah.
and so I plan to share those, but, like, so was there anything else, like, in your experience that you felt like was difficult with the Sundown Scaries? Like, did Dev experience them at all,
I'd have
or
to ask him.
yeah.
I'm sure he did. I just remember like even when my daughter started more sleeping through the night, which I
You
think that
still experienced it?
helped. Yes, because I remember one time I went. It was the first time I went out with friends. Um, like Dev called me and was like, she woke up and she was like inconsolable. So after that, I was like nervous to go out
Yeah, no, I get it.
because I was like,
I'm the
this
same
is
way.
gonna happen again. And so it was
Well,
like,
I feel bad.
yes, yes. And it's like, he's wonderful with my daughter, but at the time it was like, sometimes you're just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I really just need like the other parent there
Yeah,
too.
sometimes you just need your teammate there to
Um,
help with it.
and so I think it transformed like to like it was definitely still Sundown Scaries, but like it became very specific to I felt bad leaving the house. So then I felt trapped.
That
So
makes sense.
yeah, so it was more like it
I'm, like, trying to
changed and it manifested, but it was still that whole idea of I still don't like the nighttime. I don't know what it's gonna hold, and I just feel kind of trapped in my house, and I don't know what's going to happen.
yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. That
So
I yeah, I'm trying to think if, like, I have experienced or, like, felt that, and I think that I have at different times,
yes,
but, like, yeah, that makes sense.
But again,
what has helped with that though for
I
you?
think honestly, I think it's just my daughter getting older.
And, like, being more consistent in how
Yeah.
she
Yes,
sleeps
like
and reliable almost.
yeah, it is, like, the more times that I went out and I don't go out that often, I'm not, like, going out
Or
4
nice
nights a
of
week.
she's got her going out jobs, like, she's
Oh god. But, like, the more times that I was able to go out successfully, I got more confident,
yeah.
and, like, I think these scaries kind of started to dissipate. And so now I mean, my daughter's almost 2, she's been sleeping through the night for a very, very long time, so, like, I don't actually experience this anymore
Yeah.
because she's so consistent, because she's older, but it takes a while,
Yeah.
and I think it's just kind of, like, the more and more times that you see consistency with your daughter or your child sleeping through the night or, having a good night, they do start to go away. So it is obviously very different for each person
Yeah.
because each baby is very different. Um, but I mean, it's hard. It's like,
It's hard.
again, I didn't know what to label it,
No, I
and
and no one freaking
I
talks
know.
about this.
It's just like I just could not understand why I had such a visceral hate of the nighttime. Of when my daughter after my daughter went to sleep, I was like,
It's a physical feeling.
I almost wanted to go to bed too,
No, yeah.
just to get it over with.
There were times where, like, I would go to bed super early because I was like, 1, I don't know when else I'm gonna sleep,
Yeah.
but also I just didn't wanna be up. I
Yeah.
didn't wanna deal with it. Totally. I was the same way. Yeah, so I also just wanted to, like, chat about a couple things that I found helpful too, because I think that that is what you just shared is that's, like, very helpful.
Mhm.
Um,
It doesn't help, like, in the immediate, obviously, but, like, with the idea that over time it gets better, like,
yes, it does.
so
It does.
sorry about that, but
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is,
yeah.
Like, you just have to walk through the sleep stuff. You have to walk through all the things that, like, developmentally happen that disrupt sleep and the night. It's just part of being a parent. Like, yeah. But I think that what I found most helpful was just communicating with Ryan about it, even though, like, I mean, you and I were both saying we lacked language to articulate, I think, what was really happening at the time. And then when I started reading about this stuff more, I was like, "Oh, this is, like, a real thing."
Like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I had no idea. But I think just, like, communicating with your
Mhm.
partner so that they are not like, "Okay, why is Molly shutting down?" Or, "Why is Ashley just sitting in a corner in the
Yeah.
room by herself
Yeah.
after her daughter went to bed?" Like, that is very helpful. I think also, like, when the sun would start to go down, we had our daughter in the spring,
Mm.
and so we had most of the summer, and what we found helpful was we would just go on walks, like, during kinda the whole sunset hours where we were just moving our bodies.
Mhm.
That helped a lot just to get out of the house. So then we'd come home, and then it was, like, bedtime routine, um, and then you're not really thinking about it as the sun is setting, so that helped a lot, but I also just think, like, having a routine where it's like that has been the most helpful, I think, where it's like, now I'm just focused on what we're doing,
Mhm.
and this is reliable because we do it every day. It helps her, it helps me, so I think that that's been really helpful.
And probably also having a routine even for when your daughter goes to bed.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Like, even
oh,
afterward,
or in, like,
like,
a
having
bedtime routine.
yeah.
Yes, for our daughter. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Oh, one thing, and I don't know if this is on your list, but one thing I think that did help me some was having a plan for myself after my daughter went to bed.
Oh.
Whether that was like, I'm gonna like craft for 2 hours, or I'm going to bake for 2 hours, or I'm gonna
Ashley's a really good baker.
thanks. Or like I'm gonna have a friend over, or like I am gonna like having a plan for after my daughter went to bed, even if it was like Dev and I are gonna watch Harry Potter. Like I think that also helped because it gave me at least a little bit to look forward to instead of just like feeling like the night was over and like my life sucks. Like it actually gave me a little bit to look forward to at
Yeah.
least.
No, I'm like, "Man, I should be doing that more."
Yeah.
I actually still don't like I usually don't have, like, a plan per se of what I'm gonna do after we put our daughter down. But like, I think that that's such a good idea. Like, do something you enjoy in that window of time. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if I have a ton more to say. I'm sure I will drive home tonight and be like, oh, here's 10 more things I wish I had thought about. But I think the reason I just wanted to talk about this is because um it's just a really hard thing to walk through, and it can feel very isolating. Like, when I, like, started thinking about this more and was like, "Hey, let's have this conversation," I, like, almost started crying. Like, just going back and, like, combing back through, like, my memories of, like, what was this like? So, um yeah, I know that there's people that will listen to this and be like, "Oh, yeah, I'm either in it or I did experience that." And yeah, I think I just wanted to talk about it because, like, you're not alone in that experience, and it's very common.
And I think it's really important. And again, I had mentioned it to a lot of my friends. I didn't have a word for it. It was just kind of like, I hate the night and I don't know why. But even that was really helpful for me because then I felt like, I feel like I'm saying this really crazy thing. And then I say it and I'm like, okay, that doesn't actually sound that crazy.
No.
Like getting it out and actually talking about it with people was helpful because then either they were able to validate it because a lot of my friends, have kids, so they were able to validate it or they're able to help me just think through it a little bit more.
That's helpful.
But yeah, I mean, I can imagine most women, especially first-time moms, experience this exact thing.
Yeah, and dads in the
And yeah. And I think another thing that kind of goes along with all of this a little bit, which we are going to do an episode on, is just the mental load. Because I think a lot of times for me too, I wanted to try to explain the Sundown Scaries to Dev, but it was so tied up with all the other, like, mental load, just things that were on my mind that I felt stressed about that I couldn't really put the right words to it. It was just kinda lumped together with, like, I feel overwhelmed and I feel sad and I feel I don't know, and that's how it would come out.
Yeah.
And I think it's a little bit separate than a mental load, but it's a part of it. So we definitely are gonna do an episode on, especially like the woman, the mom's mental load when it comes to a child or children.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been planning that
Yeah.
that conversation. Yeah, there's something you said and I was like, "Oh, that's, like, really good." Um, but I agree, and I also think on, like, a lighter note, like, kind of funny, but, like, maybe dark humor, I don't know, is, like, what kind of helps me these days is just having, like, extremely low expectations.
Yeah.
So, like, basically, like, rock bottom expectations of, like, this night, probably gonna be terrible. And then if it's not, like, terrible and it's just, like, pretty bad, that's freaking great. And you just feel pretty good about it. So, like, honestly, that could be a hot take, but just, like,
Not terrible advice. Not
like,
terrible
not
advice.
maybe not, like, the best advice, like, and your therapist probably wouldn't tell you that, but, like, I'm not a therapist. There you go. But, yeah, I think just, like, honestly, though, like
Yeah.
like, humor aside, like, keeping
Yeah.
realistic, like, low expectations each night is very helpful.
No, I mean, I would totally agree with that. How does it easier?
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about this. I think it is a mental load
Yeah.
for both the moms and dads, but for moms especially because you're like in the hormones and everything. It's hard.
A lot going on.
So, yep.
But we would love to hear just about your experience or if you have any questions or comments on this topic, you can email us at surprisemommapod@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Surprise Mama, as well as you can listen.
Yep, on YouTube, listen and watch on YouTube, listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
We're everywhere.
Yeah. Like and share our episodes. It does really help out. I hate like when people say that, but like it really does.
But like for real.
Also, like we are wanting, more moms just to hear and just be involved in this community. So
Yeah.
just let them know, share, and yeah, we would just also love to hear from you guys. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for listening.
Yeah, and, like, thank you for sharing and telling us your experiences. I get messages and, like, texts from people, and, like, I think there's a few conversations we've had that people have pointed to for resources for their friends. So, yeah, just keep doing that because that's why we're putting the effort into doing this. We just wanna help other people. So, alright. Bye.
Bye.